Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Expanding Forward radio show. Conversations about juicy living. With your host, Carole Lewitsky.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Expanding Forward radio show. I am your host, Carole Lewitsky, and today's topic is freedom around parenting. Is it possible to avoid overwhelm? If you're listening online, the chat room is open, so feel free to comment or ask questions. And if you're listening to this on a podcast replay, you can go to blogtalkradio.com/expandingforward and sign up for show reminders to catch the show live for future episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook at Expanding Forward or contact me directly at carole@lewitsky.com. So the topic for today is around parenting. For the last month, everything that has been showing up for me has been around that topic. Yes, of course, I do have quite a few kiddos in my life, so it's not shocking that this topic comes up a lot. But I have to admit that normally I'm not the one to jump into that conversation when it comes to parenting. And maybe that surprises you since I've been raising children for the last 20 years. But the truth is, what I've come to see is that the more I learn, the less I feel I know. And you might think that 8 children later, I got better and better at being a mother, strictly based on the practice that I've been getting. But that isn't necessarily the case. I would say what changed the most in my way of parenting is my perspective about the experience and how this role is continuously evolving. Prepping for the show this morning was, I've been prepping for a week, but just more specifically this morning really took me deeper into this journey. I can see why I had been avoiding talking about this for as long as I have, because it took me back to those first years. I let myself feel again what it was like to be a new mom, and it took me back to a space I had completely forgotten I had ever experienced. When you live life differently and when you experience freedom, you forget just how different it can ever be, and you just don't necessarily want to remember. But for the sake of this conversation, I took myself back there, and it was a pretty emotional experience. Mostly probably what I got out of it is just like a recognition of how far I've come and how it's possible for others to feel this freedom that I now feel. It brought up a lot of old stuff, a lot of painful memories, but this is what motivates me to talk about it, because then maybe others don't have to go through that as well. So let me start by giving you a little bit of background on bits and pieces of what my journey as a mother has been, and then we can jump into our topic. As a young child, I would say around 11 years old, I already had this knowing that I was going to have a big family. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how. It wasn't this fantasy dream that I had. It wasn't even a wanting to have a big family or hoping I would have a big family. It was just a knowing. And it even sounds bizarre to me now because I have a 10-year-old and I'm thinking, how was I thinking of that at that age? But it was what it was. I knew it. And then I also wasn't like the girly girl type of child either. I wasn't playing house all the time or with dollies. I probably was more of a tomboy than anything. You could find me in the back pasture in the forest building teepees with twigs. But still, that feeling inside of me, that knowingness just stayed with me. And by the time I was 19 years old, I had been undergoing a few medical issues and did some medical work and testing. And what the gynecologist ended up telling me as a result is that I had a condition that basically made me infertile and that I would not be able to have children. And, of course, in the shock of the moment, when that slowly started sinking in, I thought to myself, that's so bizarre, because I know and I have known for so long that I am going to have a big family. So I just opened myself up to different ideas and options, and, of course, adoption was just something that just felt very natural. Brought it up to my husband when we got married, and he was on the same page, just if this is meant to happen for us, we'll find a way. And so we ended up conceiving not very long into our marriage. And to this day, I thank that doctor, believe it or not, because I never set out to prove him wrong by any stretch of the imagination, and he's passed on now, so I wouldn't go back to him to show him that he was wrong. I think the tests were absolutely correct, but there was a different story that needed to play out for us, and things that supersede medical evidence. But beyond that is every single one of our children felt like it was a miracle to me. That because of what that doctor said, I never took for granted every single one of our little ones that came into this world. And I also took my job as a mom very seriously. So even before our first was born, I was already purchasing books on parenting and on being pregnant and what would be the best, what to expect when you're pregnant, what to expect the first year, you guys know the drill. There's every book under the sun touched my hands, because I wanted to make sure that I would be doing a good job, that I would be getting it right, that my children would get the best of what I was capable of giving them. And so little man came along, our first one, and he was an angel. He was just, I don't want to stereotype all firstborns, because I don't think it's the same across the board, but I have seen a bit of a trend there that sometimes the first one can be just an easier experience, in that he wasn't colicky, he slept well. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but what I didn't take into account is we were going through a lot of other challenges in our life, so it was permitted that our first be an angel. But I didn't see it that way at the time. I thought, heck, I'm doing something right. I've read the right books, and I'm getting this down pat, because I am following it to the letter, and I'm seeing the results. I mean, by the time he was in his so-called terrible twos, I could just frown my eyebrows, and he would step away from the forbidden items that I was telling him he couldn't touch. It was that incredible. And so I kept getting evidence that whatever I was doing right, and I should just keep working harder and perfecting the art of parenting. And then number 2 came along. Well, let me just say, in a matter of not even 2 months, he completely blasted away any illusion that I had that I knew what the heck I was doing. He was colicky, he didn't sleep, he nursed with great difficulty. I was cutting every food out of my diet because I thought he was allergic to this or that, or reacting to this or that. Little did I know at the time that it was most probably the overwhelm I was feeling, the pressure I was putting on myself, that was causing the colics in him to begin with. But that's a whole other story. But the point is that he came along to show me a different way. It was the start of my journey, which was a long one, but of slowly letting go of the idea of what it should look like. And so Overwhelm at that point became the norm for me. And when you don't know any different, it just becomes what is familiar, and you don't even see it as a problem, because that's all you're like in a constant state of overwhelm. And so you don't even consider that you could change or try things differently, because that's all you know. So that gives you a little taster of what we'll be talking about today. Overwhelm shows up in all stages of parenting, but I wanted to just start with the show with just showing you how right from being pregnant we can start experiencing overwhelm. So I don't want to delay in bringing on our guest today, because she's just an amazing individual, and she can offer a completely different perspective and still very rich. And she has, for me personally, been a mentor in many ways. And so Jeannie Selda is a mother of 11-year-old twin boys. She is a student, a teacher, and an agent of awakening. She travels all around the world working with people who are on their path to awakening. Jeannie's passion, other than her gorgeous boys, is being a photographer, but not any ordinary photographer. She captures the essence of life through the images that she brings forward. And when you see her work, it affects you and activates you on such a deep level. She, unlike me, did not get the luxury of an easy firstborn. She got thrown right into the mix of the role of being mom with what I've come to kind of see as two versions of my second child: lively, strong-willed, adventurous, never gives you a break. And that was her intro into motherhood. So welcome, Jeannie. Does that kind of sum up what it's been like for you?
Thank you, Carole. I am just grateful that you couldn't have put it any better, and very, very, very grateful to be here and to share this very vulnerable, tough conversation.
Yeah, it's something else. I didn't actually know what I was getting into when I just, like, the title popped up in front of me, and it just went from there. And it wasn't really until this morning that I was like, oh boy. And it's probably good that it just happened this morning that I felt that way, because I might have pulled the plug and said, let's just delay this show, like find some excuse to not. But here we are. There's no turning back. We're going to do this. And so is there a little bit of background you want to give us on what motherhood has been for you?
Sure, I'd love to. I had grown up I was born in Kingston, Ontario. And, at age 1, I was taken to the Philippines by my parents because my parents wanted to introduce me to my grandparents. And interestingly enough, at that point, it was, instead of going back to Canada, I was left there. And it was my grandparents that wanted to take care of me, that wanted to make everything better for my parents, as they were first generation Filipinos in Canada, that I would be taken care of. So rather than coming back to Canada, it was interesting that I had stayed in the Philippines for the next 4 years. And fast forward to when I had my twins, or even in the process of trying to get pregnant, I recognized so many attachments I had to what kind of parent I wanted to be, how it was supposed to look like. And when I had the boys 11 years ago, it was probably the most incredible experience. Just, again, the attachment to my story that this is how it's supposed to be. I am going to be the best parent in the whole wide world, and I am never going to leave their side, and I am always going to be here to support them in everything they want to do to allow them to thrive. But it was funny because I was really hit with a reality check, because at 4 years old, when they were 4, their dad and I had separated, and it became a journey, a single journey of, okay, now I have the opportunity to really see what this looks like. And interestingly enough, when they started getting a little bit older, when they can voice their opinions, I found myself to get so triggered and overwhelmed at times that it just made me question what was going on. And for me, it has definitely been an intense, gratifying, joyful, and painful journey at the same time of trying to really figure out what that really looks like for me. Because I realized, it's all about, being at the top of my totem pole, whereby when I had grown up, I always had the perception that because of my race, color, culture, creed, that being at the bottom of the totem pole is just the norm. Your family is first, your siblings are first, everyone is first before you. And I realized with clarity with having these kids is that I can't do that. It's just like I have to be at the top of my totem pole to be able to really just get the clarity of, okay, to stay grounded and to stay in my heart and to really get where all the pullings are coming from. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And I think that our intention to be the best mother, the best parent we can be, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of seeing, like even in my wanting to read up on parenting, it's not that there's anything wrong with those books, but the books themselves were a cause of overwhelm for me because I was trying so hard to be all of that. And to just have such high expectations, what I came to realize later is that when you utilize knowledge and it can eliminate your intuition as a parent. And so when you talk about being at the top of the totem pole, that's what it makes me think of, is like it's not about the selfishness of like everyone comes last and you don't care about anyone else and you're just going to take care of yourself. It's actually the opposite. It's that as we learn all over again, because I can relate to how the order was completely reversed. It was about like making sure my children were happy and healthy and my husband and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It's a direct pathway to overwhelm because you're completely shutting down and not listening to what is actually being asked for. When in the earlier stages of the babies, for example, you've got crying, no sleep, you're hormonal, you're sick, and you're still trying to make it all work, make it all be okay around you and take care of everyone. If we don't reach out for help and assistance, which is, it really is ingrained in our society, like just doing it on your own, trying to handle it all, right? To look like that mom that's got, or that father that's got it together, has got it figured out. And I mean, the list goes on with every age group. Toddlers are terrible too. You're trying to like appease them or calm them down in their anger and in their rage, and trying to understand what's going on for them and being present to them, when what I realized is that I was so not connected to myself, so busy being preoccupied with making sure everything around me was harmony and was working optimally, that our little ones pick up on that. And so they, even though you can have a smile on your face and look like you've got your act together and you're happy on the outside, if it's overwhelm that's happening on the inside, that's when they can start really manifesting in their own way a reflection of what's happening inside of us. Would you say you've seen that for yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I have. And it hasn't, and in our awakening or in our evolution, you think, okay, Jeannie, let's celebrate how far we've come, but then it doesn't stop from what the kids are still going to go through, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say probably the biggest game changer for me was understanding the concept of caring versus carrying. Like this whole idea that, how many times have we heard our mothers, or we've maybe even said it ourselves, like, I'm your mother, I love you, I worry about you. That's what mothers do. Right?
Yep.
It's been so collapsed, and like love means worrying and worrying means loving. And so I've had conversations with mothers that have 2-year-olds, and they're even worrying about what things will be like for their child when they're a teenager. That's like
Yes.
13 years down the road, or 11 years on the road, and it completely pulls us out of the moment when all we're given, all we're equipped to handle is what's right in front of us, and that in this case would be the 2-year-old or the 4-year-old. And
Yes.
carrying would be worrying about their well-being as if life wouldn't present for them exactly what's perfect for them. And so how does that show up in your life, or how have you seen that show up in your life where you can look back and say, yeah, I was in full-blown carrying mode, and how you see it differently now?
Well, I remember that when I had separated from the kid's dad, and I recall feeling so incredibly overwhelmed, and how I saw that was I found myself to be very irritable. I found myself to be extremely lethargic. I had no energy with how to keep up the house, how to enjoy the kids. Even taking them out for a walk was such a challenge for me. And when we had separated, what I realized, how I realized I was carrying so much was I realized that I was projecting just all the worries and what could happen down the road when I finally move into my new place, or when my ex-husband is gone and I'm by myself and I have the kids, and if they're going to be away, or if they're going to be okay with their dad, or if they're going to, if they're going to just suffer the perceptive consequences of a divorced family. And I remember just feeling so just frustrated and overwhelmed. That was just basically it. It was just like I couldn't even find the clarity. I couldn't even get myself grounded because I realized I was so worried about their well-being. I was projecting all the negative things that could possibly go wrong in a quote unquote broken family, that it's like I realized that I had lost the core feeling of just being grounded and in my body and being present to the moment with them, because I was too worried about what could happen, how things are supposed to look like, and if they don't turn out the way they're supposed to look like, et cetera, et cetera. So that's when I really realized at that moment, it's like, wow, there really is a difference between caring about these kids and carrying these kids and their worries and my worries and projecting it onto them, and not only to me but everything around me.
And you put it so perfectly, because it's not even just carrying what's right in front of us happening, but it's carrying the ideas, the stories we make up about how their life will play out. Like I remember in my earlier, probably for like 15 years of being a mom, and my husband would vouch for that, it would take me minimum 2 hours to fall asleep at night. And I would lay there and I would go through every scenario for every one of my kids of what's happening now, what could happen within the next year, what will happen by the time they're teenagers. I would go through every scenario, which in the end was just stories that I was creating, because we can't possibly know what's going to happen. But it was that part of me that was wanting to be prepared, to be proactive, to be ready for when and if this or that would happen. And how else is that going to manifest except for overwhelm? When imagine you're playing out the lives of others, not just your own, but the ones for your children. And you're thinking you're doing that out of love because you're just preparing yourself so that if that happens, you'll know what to do. But that, again, completely removes intuition from the equation. Mm-hmm. That we not only as mothers can tap into our intuition, but fathers as well, absolutely. And it's in every moment of every day. It's not like right now I will have intuition and guidance to know what to do next week. I don't even have that for like half an hour from now. I only have it for right now, right? And so it definitely, like, that was a huge game changer of seeing that when I carry people that I love, which means worrying about them or feeling. I'll illustrate a really simple example. My 8-year-old now, Julia, when she was 6, she was in grade 1. For the first 2 months of school, she would come home sick all the time, to the point where I had to keep her home for close to a month. And we finally had a conversation where she came right out and said, "Mommy, when I see the little boy fall and hurt his knee, I feel pain in my knee. And when I see the little girl having trouble reading because she doesn't know how, I feel pain in my heart. And when I see the teacher get mad at that little boy, it hurts in my, like, she just went on, and I was like, goodness, no wonder you're getting sick." And so that's a very, like, simplistic example of carrying. She was carrying everyone else's problems. She's a highly sensitive child. All our children are, and ours are anyway, so we call that empathy. But empathy taken to the next level is like taking it on yourself. That's not good for you. It's not good for the other person as well. So I went on to just explain to her how we all have a basket on our head. When we wake up in the morning, the basket is empty, and we only have room for our own challenges and our own things that come up. I gave her examples. I said, by the end of the day, the basket is full. But if we feel and take on everyone else's things, it overflows out of our basket. And if it's too heavy, it'll break our back. And so it's the same as parents. If we're constantly worrying about all the what ifs, all the potential paths our children could go on, or even carrying the path they are on right now, not only will overwhelm us and put us past what we can handle, but it's also highly disempowering to our children.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
I absolutely agree. And isn't it interesting, because what I realized lately is that, it's almost like we're setting, by having our own attachments to how things are supposed to look like because of our comfort, of wanting to know how it's going to turn out, that everything is going to be okay. It's like we're setting up our kids for failure. And, how I realize that for myself is that it's like I realize the identity that I have, where it's like I don't like making mistakes. I don't like, seeing that I could have done it better and I didn't because I was reactive or I was overwhelmed and I did this or I did that. And it's just like I realize how hard I am on myself when it comes to work, when it comes to home. And then, a wise person once told me, it's funny, she said, if you can't give yourself the grace to make a mistake, how can you ever have grace for, how can we ever have grace for our kids, much less give them permission to do the same? So it's like, just another level of clarity there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because the one thing you can't do with kids is BS them. Like, you can't.
Oh my God, no way.
Right? You can't say this is what it's like, forgive yourself, this is how it should look like. It's okay you make mistakes, and then when we make mistakes, we can't let it go. Or we're so hard on ourselves, then we're overwhelmed, and then we're overwhelmed that we're overwhelmed.
Yep.
It's like a nonstop loop of craziness. And so to use, we could talk about actual techniques, like I know for myself, learning to just walk away when I feel that I'm going to that place of overwhelm. So that, before we could do that, though, we have to learn to even listen to our own body and be able to see when the signs are there. and not just catch ourselves when we're like in the space of explosion or just overwhelmed where we're just like shutting down. But just at all age, every stage, there's things to be done that help us to just reset, like you talked about earlier, grounding yourself. What does that mean? It just means getting back into feeling, maybe balance would be a word people would understand well, but just like feeling like there's just a sense of like, okay, I can walk back into the situation and handle it more optimally. So you have a baby crying. I mean, I had times when babies would cry and I was so overwhelmed by the sound because it was just so constant and never ending. But in a case like that, you're better off to put them back in their crib and go in your room and put a headset on and listen to music that can just bring you back to a place of pull you out of the overwhelm, right? Get you back into your heart is how you and I would phrase it, right? And then re-enter into the situation and be able to just love them the way that we want to. And then same goes for toddlers. You put them in their playpen and you step away. I mean, you and I call that taking 5, right? Just having that moment to reset. When they're too big as a toddler and they step out of their crib, then reverse the handle on their door. I mean, get creative. That becomes their big playpen. They're safe in there. They're much safer than in your space if you're overwhelmed, because it's not cool. It's not going to be good parenting that's going to come through. And then the list goes on, right, for each age group. But beyond that, what's at the core of it all before the overwhelm even happens, I would say the biggest culprit for overwhelm is the pressure to get it right. Would you say that's a big one?
That is a huge one for me, especially when you're pulled by, all the books and all the, the amazing videos of these incredible parents who just seem to have the most angelic kids, and just society. You think that it's like you're just supposed to have these, well-behaved, amazing kids is a reflection of the success you are as a parent. And I grew up that way, but I also grew up in the way that it's better to be seen and not heard. So it's just so many different conflicting ideas that when you finally become a parent, I'm asking myself, what's going on? You feel so discombobulated. You get the clarity, you know what you're supposed to do, you have the tools, but then you feel so derogatory towards so many things. And it's like, okay, now we need to take 5. What's happening?
Well, and you bring up a good point, because it's like the pressures of society, the pressures of all these amazing books that are out there, and I am not against those books, but I was using it instead of my intuition. Like, I was using it as a step-by-step, follow the rules, when read books on parenting, but just take from it what works for you. And at the end of the day, the most powerful tool is just to show up as the best version of you that you can for that day, and cut yourself a break. Because let's put it clearly here, like, if I think of my own parents, they were amazing parents, they loved us, but if I read all the most recent books, they've done everything opposite or wrong or nothing from those books. We should be totally messed up as adults. And yet we're functioning just fine. Like, at the core of it all, it's like, if anything we can be liberated as parents is if we're doing the best we can every day, we're loving our children to the best of our ability, there's no room for overwhelm, because overwhelm only shows up when we put pressures on ourselves to get it right, when we panic or we let fear set in that our children are in danger in any way, shape, or form. So if we skip ahead to, danger, okay, so we can even talk about that they're harmed from the mistakes we've made, so that's going to the past. That totally pulls you out of the present. Or damage from stuff that might come their way in the future. What message is that giving our kids? It's like saying that they're not even in their own, that they're not empowered, or that they haven't been given the skills or or the abilities to handle our imperfect parenting or any future situations that might come their way? How about instead we tell them, you know what, you're here, and you're here now in this society, in this existence, with me as a parent, so you're probably equipped to handle that. Like even I remember my parents being like, and that generation being so scared for the technology. So if we talk about that for a minute, the technology we were being exposed to. I remember the rock music, because that's like a religious upbringing, but that would just corrupt my soul. And bless my father. I have to tell this story. He's gonna laugh when he hears this, but I would like sit by that old-fashioned radio we had way back when with my tape recorder, and I would wait till my favorite soft rock love song would come on. It would take forever, right? You'd have to time it so perfectly because you'd memorize the first two notes of it. Oh my gosh, there it is, and press record. You finally get it, you're super quiet for the recording, then you stop it before the announcer talks because you have no way of editing. Like kids these days don't have a clue just how good they have it for that. But anyways, my lovely father would take my tape recorder with all these songs, and he would record over top with his beautiful like piano music. And I love his piano music. I would always ask him to play before bed, but there was the fear of rock being like corrupting. And I'm just bringing this up because our parents, the generation of our parents, had fear around TV, around this or that, the influence. Guess what? We had to be equipped because we got through it somehow, right? Mm-hmm. And so our kids now are exposed to different stuff. So there's social media and there's access to crazy stuff on the internet. And yet if they're here in this time of our world and where it's at, isn't it possible that they're also equipped the way you and I were equipped to handle what would come our way?
I think.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you have people that talk to you about their fears around that? Because I have a lot of people that approach me on fear of like society, where it's at, where it's going, what our children are exposed to, and it can be a mad frenzy. That alone can cause major overwhelm.
Absolutely. And you know what? It was funny that you had mentioned something about, just the fear of our kids getting hurt, or the fear of what could happen if we give them full reign. It's the fears of what it's going to look like if we don't stay on top of them to the extent that, from a space of not having to make the same mistakes that we did. And at the same time, what I'm realizing now, at least for my kids, and of course it's different as they get older, for me it's being able to really let go and see just how fully equipped they are at this moment at 11 years old, that they can really find the solutions for themselves on a lot of things. When it comes to very big, life issues such as driving or, going to the park by yourself that happens to be 5 blocks away, there's going to be re-steering. There's going to be definitely guidance. But for me, what I'm realizing too, and what I'm hearing from many of my friends, is just the attachment and the fear that it's like it's all going to be personal. If something happens to them, this is how we're going to be seen as a parent. I'm going to be seen if my kids are outside playing and they go to the park by themselves, and and with technology today, I see all these Amber Alerts, you see all these fears of kidnappings, and my kids even see them. So all of a sudden, we're projecting all this fear that it's like, oh my God, if what's going to happen if something happens to them? They're already afraid of being kidnapped. I'm just afraid of them getting hurt or getting lost and not finding their way home. And then behind that, I realize, oh my gosh, it's like I am so afraid of being seen as an unfit parent or as a failure, not only to other people, but most importantly to myself. And it's like, when does it come time for us to, take the pressure off ourselves in the way that, okay, you know what, universe, you have our backs. Just show me how, show me the solutions. I move the energy with the kids. I tell them exactly what the boundaries are. They may like it or they may not, but I just find that the older they get, the more it becomes an energy game. It's just like, it's all about the pullings. It's all about trying to figure out what triggers mommy so that, I can finally give in, because I am so exhausted from the overwhelm. But I realize it's just, it was remember that one conversation that you and I had a long time ago about, me feeling so overwhelmed with the kids, because I was just guiding, re-steering, but they kept going and going and going. And then when they finally realized I would not back down, from canceling a play date because of their behaviors and fighting with each other, it's like all of a sudden there was a sense of peace. But you had shared with me, when you were younger, it's like as much as you had challenged the parental system, it's like there was a part of you that really respected and honored that, because you needed the guidance, you needed the boundaries. And that really, it really affected me to say, okay, no, it's not about feeling the guilt that I'm not giving them everything I can because I'm a single mother, or because, it's just wanting to give them everything, period. It's just, no, there is also something known as boundaries, and letting them know, hey, sorry, I told you guys you had to be home at this time, and you didn't, so that's it. It's just like you've just made the decision to not have your electronics for a week, right? And to be able to be very consistent with that, it has worked wonders for me, and it does take a lot of effort perceptively, because I'm so tired sometimes that I just want to give in. I say, fine, go have your phone. Give me an hour of peace. But then at the end of the day, it's just like they just come back realizing, Mom just gave in last time. Let me just cry a little bit louder. Let me just challenge a little bit louder, and harder. So it's like, no, it's all about re-steering.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm just going to intervene right now just quickly, just to do station identification. So I just want to remind everyone that you're listening to our Expanding Forward Blog Talk Radio show, and you can join us every third Monday of the month right here at Blog Talk Radio /Expanding Forward. And for those of you on the phone, if you have any questions, you can press 1. So no, I mean, Jeannie, you bring up valid points. Another major source of overwhelm as well, is the pressures we put on ourselves to involve our children and give them opportunities and have them experience this or that, and the extracurricular activities outside of school, and just trying to give them all these opportunities when as a parent of a bigger family, we were forced to really to still give them a lot, but to still use more and more of our gut and our intuition on choices, just because of the sheer time, like that we wouldn't be able to do it all. But what I remember someone sharing with me, they were only 2 kids in their family, and their parents, very well-intentioned when they were younger, were put in every extracurricular activity under the sun, out of good intention, caused overwhelm for the kids as well, because it was just go all the time, and never a moment to breathe. So probably the parents are also living that mode as well, of not ever taking time to take 5. And sometimes just in our best of intentions, we can just want to give our kids so much, but the best we can give them is just empowering them to really listen to their own body and what their limitations are, and when they do need to take a break, and when they need to step away or unplug from the craziness. And when you were talking earlier about guiding our children, it's interesting, because I'm seeing, even from our first to our younger ones, just how it has changed, even societally, at what age do we actually not really have a direct influence on our kids anymore? And what I mean by that is, like, you give them a foundation, and of course when they're younger years, you're really there to keep them safe from not crossing the road and getting hit by a car and so on and so forth, making sure they have balanced nutrition and all those things. But as far as, like, instilling in them values or core values, and it's like, I don't know, I don't want to, like, give an age, but what I'm seeing, like, whatever you haven't taught them before the age of, like, some is 11, as young as 11, depending on the personality, but between 11 and 13, you're done. Like, that's what I'm seeing is your job or your role as a parent completely shifts, in that you're still there as a guide, but it's a completely different experience. They are really stepping into their own journey, and they're starting to really get their feelers out there as to where they see their life taking them. And so as much as we can start really living that for ourselves on how to be empowered in our life, how to make choices based on what's in our highest, and then show them that they have the ability to do that as well. And you're a great role model for that, because I've learned a lot from you on how to have those conversations with your boys, that rather than it being you influencing how they feel and how they think, you empower them to put into words what they are feeling, what they are experiencing in life. And that, to me, is a powerful way to equip them to become self-sufficient adults eventually, right?
Yeah.
So can you share with us a little bit of, like, what a conversation like that would look like if you're seeing your little man, like, frustrated or in a situation that they're stumped, and rather than telling him what to do, like, that's what I've seen you be such a leader as a parent for, that is you empower them to really find the answer within themselves.
Well, you know, I try to do that as much as I can, and I definitely haven't mastered the practice, but, you know, just with these two very, very, very busy boys, it's like, it's just, you have no choice but to keep staying in your flow. And interestingly enough, something had happened this weekend where, you know, my one little guy had his iPhone, and the other guy only had an iPad. And, you know, it was breaking down, it was cracked, it was on its last legs. You know, they only use it for games, they only use it for, you know, their Kik texting or whatever app it is. And it's funny because, you know, something had happened on the weekend where, you know, I had the opportunity to get another iPhone, and for my one guy who didn't have one. And he had said to me, McLean had said to me, you know, Mom, I just wanted to know if we can talk about who's going to get this iPhone, because Kai had the broken one. It was still working, but it was broken. But McLean was hoping to get the new one. And when McLean had asked me, you know, can we talk about who's going to get the iPhone? I said, well, at this point, it would be your brother, but we can certainly talk about it later because, you know, he was the first one that had received the first iPhone. And that triggered him right away. He immediately had a huge tantrum, and I let it go. I let him have his tantrum. I didn't discount his feelings. I knew exactly where it was coming from. And later on, after he had calmed down, you know, I took him aside and I said, you know, can I ask you, you know, what happened? You know, where was your mind triggered? And but first of all, I said to him, you know, I'd like to share with you what I'm responsible for. He goes, I should have stopped and taken a moment to even just ask you how you were feeling about it first and what the options were, and not necessarily what was going to happen because it was fair, but because it was in the highest. And he immediately said, I got triggered that you were giving the iPhone to my brother and not to me. And I said, so where was your mind going with it. He says, well, he actually said, my ego said that you had, I did everything. I did my chores, I cleaned my room, I folded the laundry, and I just did everything, and I'm still not going to get the phone. And I said, that I can see how frustrating that must have been. And I said to him, so behind that, what did your ego make that to mean? I go, do you think, is it possible, and this may or may not be true, but do you think it's because your ego made it to mean that I love you less, or you're not as important than your brother, or your brother deserves something better than you do? And he says, that's exactly where my ego went. And I said, wow, thank you for sharing that. And just even acknowledging that and acknowledging him and his emotions, and him hearing me acknowledge how frustrated he was feeling, it completely dissipated the energy. Like, he was no longer triggered. He completely got it. And he says, you know what, Mommy, I'm just grateful to have a phone. But it's so funny how our egos can get attached. Our minds can get triggered, and then the egos can make it mean something completely different. So that was one thing that I really had the privilege of seeing shift so quickly when I took a moment. But mind you, though, if I was exhausted and I was overwhelmed because I made everything else mean everything more important than just this moment with him, it's like I wouldn't have been able to have the energy to have that conversation.
Right.
I would have just said, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And what I would add to that is he wouldn't even understand the concept had you not emulated that for him before, because I know you have, where you would have a moment yourself and then later have a conversation with them around your own ego, how you made up the story, how you took it personally, and why you reacted the way you did. So if anything, that's where the power lies. It's not even so much about teaching our kids stuff, it's about teaching ourselves the stuff, living it firsthand, and then they just get it. They just automatically get it. They start applying it to their own lives. And a huge one is accepting our own humanity, that we make mistakes, that as parents we're going to have moments where we're not proud of them. But how cool is that we can have a conversation later and just say, yeah, that's what was going on, not justifying our behavior, just talking about it with them and saying, and not beating ourselves up about it, or because they will emulate that then, that we can let ourselves, make mistakes and then just have the humility to have the conversation. Some parents I've seen have a fear that if their child sees them that vulnerable, that they'll lose respect for them, that if they see you admit your mistakes, it's the opposite. They gain so much respect for you when you can show them that you're, we think we could fool them by, being totally incongruent to their face and then saying, because I'm the adult, I know better, so don't question me, don't disrespect me, don't talk back to me, when they see that when we're not being authentic with our word, when we're saying one thing but we're doing another, how could that be better than saying, you know what, I really screwed up. I yelled at you when I could have handled it differently. I compared you with one of your siblings. That wasn't cool, and you didn't deserve that, and however it's going to come out, right? But we can choose to have those conversations and use them as amazing learning moments.
Absolutely. And it was funny because prior to that conversation, it was, I just finished watching and observing two little boys who were fighting nonstop over electronics. Who was going to get what? Who was supposed to get next? Who was supposed to get what iPhone next? Who is going to watch the movie on the iPad versus on the TV? And it was just a constant battle between the two of them. And it got to a point that after several hours of witnessing just all this screaming and fighting, you know, I'm the first person to admit that I just, you know, I was like, I lost it. I'm like, guys, what is going on? And the moment I raise my voice, it immediately makes them stop. But then what happens for me is that all the guilt comes up saying, oh, there you go. You know, you are a bad parent by raising your voice. But at the end of the day, it's funny because it's just like, you know, I'm not going to judge myself in being in that overwhelm at that point, but at the same time, it's recognizing for what it was and being able to have that conversation with the kids later, because then I said, you know what, guys, this is what I'm responsible for. This is what I'm accountable for. You know, I started getting very frustrated because all I could hear is you guys fighting and fighting. You guys have the solution. You guys figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, there's just not going to be any electronics. It's simple as that. And he goes, however, for me, what I'm responsible for is my ego getting triggered that I'm a failure as a mom because you guys I haven't taught you the tools, the most effective tools to figure it out yourselves, you know. But meanwhile, they're going to figure out the way they're going to figure it out. It's me not judging the process. And it's also me guiding to make sure that they don't get hurt. But at the same time, it's thinking, okay, they do have the solutions. At 11 years old, they are brilliant young kids that they do have the solutions.
Absolutely.
But it's sometimes you can just recognize the energy game for what it is. It's like, let's just see if we can entangle mom, you know?
Well, and recognizing as a parent that it really isn't personal either. It's not, they're not out to get us either. Like their behavior, if we look at it from a neutral standpoint, is not them deliberately setting out to manipulate us, because that then becomes like, you know, the adversary that we have to, but at the same time, it is a skill that they it's a tool that they're using, but it's not personal in that even if our kids say, I hate you, or they shut us out, or they refuse to say, I love you for a period in their life, it's not personal about us.
Yes.
That's their journey. That's their stuff that they're working through. That's their things that they're processing. And even in the manipulation and in the energy game, that still is their game. Yeah. And I love how you bring up how easily that can trigger these ideas in our head that makes us a inadequate parent, or that we're not doing a good job. Or for me, a lot of both my husband and I are like you talked about, like raising your voice and then guilting yourself for that. It's ridiculous. Like you almost guilt yourself for a moment of being upset or angry when we're entitled to that, right? Like when we start creating forbidden emotions for ourselves, then we're creating forbidden emotions for our kids.
Yeah.
Like that we can't be angry, or we can't be sad, or we can't be anxious or upset, or those things will come up, and to let ourselves be fully human in experiencing it all, not it defining us as who we are. At the core, even when you raised your voice at your boys, they know you love them. There's not a fiber in their being that could doubt that you love them. And so it's also giving ourselves permission, and ultimately the side effect is giving our kids permission to feel it all and to be empowered. I just love your example with your boys at 11 years old, how they're able to work through that. So they really are equipped to work through things like that. And it's only us not having confidence that they can that creates a block, that makes it not happen, that it can't manifest at that point. What's cool is if we keep empowering our children to have a mind of their own and to think for themselves and to trust their inner guidance, to tap into their own intuition, where is there room for overwhelm for their future? Because at that point, you're empowering these children to step into their life, knowing that whatever comes their way, they will be fully equipped and able to handle it.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so it's really there that you get to see, and I wanted to touch a little bit about the teenage years because that's been coming up quite a bit in people around me that are experiencing a lot of challenges with their relationship with their teenagers. And I just want to say that going back to the beginning of the show when I talked about my angel child, that he, in his own way, every single one of them has their journey. And for him, he was just like a very easygoing, just wanted to please, right? And so as a parent, you see that as an easy child. You see that as like, wow, couldn't get better than this. But there came a time where he needed to find his own voice, and he needed to find his own way. And what that looked like for him was going through a period of time where he disconnected and needed to put his feelers out there into the world and to make his own assessment of what works for him and what doesn't work for him. And what that looked like as a parent, if I hadn't had the guidance and the coaching and the assistance that I did, I could have so easily gone into complete panic mode. And I could have so easily been scared out of my mind. Yeah, there were moments where I was, but it pushed me to really put into practice this statement that we, all of us, I'm sure at one point or another, we've said this to our children: I love you no matter what. And so what if that what doesn't look like you want it to look like? What if that what is you don't know where they are for days? And what if that looks like your child, the little beautiful, innocent person that you know is still there, but is not coming out in the behaviors that are in front of you? And so during that period of time, it can be so disillusioning as a parent. And if you take it personally, it can really throw you into overwhelm really quickly. It's during that time that you have to really step into the knowing that the universe has our back, has our children's back at all time, and that if something is going on in their life, it is perfect. It's happening for them, not to them. And during that time, there was a period where I was feeling this boy is like affectionate and sensitive and just expressive in every way. And during that time, he needed to find that for himself, not to please mom, not to please dad. He needed to find his way for himself. And there were times when you go through periods of time as a parent that you are loving your children, but it's not being reciprocated, it's a scary period to go through. But I'm going to give one piece of advice that a coach I was working with at the time gave me. And this applies to every relationship in your life. It doesn't necessarily need to be your teenager, but if you ever feel disconnected with someone, this coach said to me, if you brought in your son right now in the room with you, what would you say to him? And I spoke to him, like he said, just no filters, nothing. What would you say to him? And I said, I would say, I love you. I miss you. I miss hearing you play guitar. But I know you're there, and I know you're okay. And it was really powerful to have that conversation. I'm just sharing that because it's doable for anybody who is feeling a disconnect with someone that you love. And what happened that afternoon is he showed up. It had been years that I hadn't seen what I knew was still there. He played guitar for me. He played piano for me, like just completely out of the blue. It was so bizarre. Like, this was like a period where he was just staying in his room and not talking, not associating with his siblings. And he would just be in and out of the house. And he sat with his siblings and watched some TV and laughed and sang with them. It was like the most unbelievable afternoon, just in the middle of the darkest period of it as a parent. And he looks back at it now, and we just had a conversation on the weekend, and he says, I did some dark things. I did things that were messed up, but he's like, I don't regret any of it because it was part of my journey. It was part of my experience. It was what I needed to experience and to live through. And I get that when you're in the middle of that as a parent, it is really, really challenging. But if anything I could say to you is know that they are always there underneath the behaviors, underneath all of the thick walls they could be putting up. The only thing they need to know from you is that you love them no matter what. They don't need the lectures. They already know what's right and wrong. Whatever you taught them 13 years and younger, they know that. It's not at 17 or 18 that you're going to be teaching them a new concept of what's in their best interest. And to love them enough to let them be free, of course, like as parents, you're still going to do everything you can to keep them safe, but there comes a time when it's not in your hands, and they will make the choices that they make. But he said to me, I always knew I had a home and I had love to come back to. I promise you that's the only thing they need to know, and they will pull through. And that afternoon when he played music and he connected, I saw what I had been seeing in his eyes all along. He had never left. He was never gone. It was all behaviors. It was all experiences. It was his journey. And it just lasted that afternoon. The next day he went back to being who what he was experiencing at the time. But it was a gift. It was an absolute gift. And I'm sharing that with you because even his siblings, like his brother, who he was so close to for so many years, came to me that night and he said, what happened to him? Like, what just happened today? I feel like I'm in Twilight Zone. Like, what just happened? But I'm telling you, and this isn't like some crazy spiritual thing. This is like how we're all connected. Like, we all have the ability to do that. When you think of someone and they text you in the next 15 minutes, what do you think happened? Is like you connected on a higher level. Like, there's something, your spirit's connected. And when I brought him into the room, his asked to see, imagine him in front of me and had that conversation with me, it really happened. And he showed up that afternoon to say, I'm still here. Just hang in there. And I still love you. I might not say it to you, but I still love you. Because during those years, he would never utter those words. And to love someone, even if you're not necessarily feeling it in the ways you always did, is really pushing your ability to love to next level, and to just letting them be so free to journey in the way that they came here to journey. So, Jeannie, I wanted to just share that little bit because I know how difficult that period can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know that is one of my fears as their hormones are increasing, as they're becoming more vocal in their wishings and wantings, and it's like and the affection has been decreasing, and I just know it's still there, but then sometimes it becomes a challenge because you're thinking, oh my God, it's happening. It's going to happen. They're going away. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, and it's going away and yet not, right? It's like they go off to just experience what they need to experience, but the core and the essence of who they are, that never leaves us. The love that we have for each other cannot be destroyed. It has been created, and it's eternal. And so if we could just really hang on to that and nothing else, no expectations of what it should look like. Like, sometimes we're motivated as parents, well, I want them to do well in school because I want them to succeed, because I want them to have all the opportunities that are out there that they have the potential of experiencing. Okay, But what do you want more than that? I ask parents. And they say, their happiness.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sometimes their happiness might not look quite like you think it should look. Maybe it doesn't mean a university degree. Like, just to be really extreme here, I'm going to say, what if their happiness means that they're jobless and homeless for a period of their life because that's what got them to seeing at the core what really matters? What if they came here to experience that? Who are we as parents to decide the fate of our children? That's not love.
Yes.
That's us wanting to prevent suffering in their life or anything that could challenge them, when that specific suffering or challenge could be exactly what they asked to experience in this lifetime to feel like a fulfilled human being. Do we want to take that away from them?
Absolutely not.
And the most powerful thing we can offer our kids is just trusting their inner knowingness. And that's by living it ourselves, having compassion for them and for ourselves, dropping the guilt, because we are all doing the best we can. So, anything to add, Jeannie?
I'm feeling the love, I'm feeling the groundedness, and I am just so thankful. I think the one thing that I wanted to share too is, and you've actually, you clarified it for me, whenever I'm traveling and around the world, and in my travels, I happen to meet some amazing parents who happen to have, all these kids, but especially they have boys. And I always ask them, what's your piece of advice when it comes to raising boys? And I actually, when I also meet kids and teenagers especially who are boys, and I'm like, what is the most, important thing, give me two things that you can share that you just want every parent to know in terms of raising you, in terms of what you've experienced. Question. And on the one side, the parents are saying, the best advice is just to be able to be with them. And these are kids who are now 30, 40, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And, the parents would say, just they are going to figure it out. As intense and as jarring and as scary as it is, they will figure it out if you let go of the attachment how you think it's supposed to look like. And on the other side, the biggest part for me is that when I'm talking to these young men, the common denominator in all of these conversations is, I just want, just let your kids know that you love them no matter what. And you said exactly that same thing. No matter what they would say, no matter what we go through, no matter what we experience, no matter how much it seems so, just crazy to you that we would be doing this, it's just letting us know that you love us no matter what. Because that's all we look for, is that safe place to land, that soft, safe place to land, that we are loved no matter what. Because at the end of the day, we are completely judged by everyone outside of my family anyways, and for people in my families. But at the same time, knowing that they are loved unconditionally, regardless of what they're going through, and to let them go through their stuff, as scary as it can be for the parent, is the most important thing in really just allowing them to speed up their awakening, like the clarity for their life of what they want. And interestingly enough, over the weekend, the boys had taken out their rollerblades that were a size too big last year, except I didn't have any of their elbow pads, their knee pads, their helmets, their wrist pads, and Kai was helping McLean put on the rollerblades. And yes, I was overwhelmed. Yes, I was exhausted. So I said, no, guys, you can't go boat rollerblading. You don't have, you don't have the guards. You don't have the wrist guards. You don't have the knee pads. You don't have your helmets. And it was funny because Kai just stood up, looked at me, and goes, Mommy, we are 11. We know there's a chance of getting hurt, but I'm going to help him. Let us take care of this. We got this. If we get hurt, we're going to learn. And I'm like, and I had nothing to say to that. I really didn't, because it's like, okay, I really just got told that I am totally carrying them. So it's like, okay,
yeah.
you guys figure it out. And then they went out for not even a minute, and they realized, okay, this is too scary, and they just started playing basketball. But I could I could have prevented me, my feelings of fear and attachment and carrying by just letting them go through their own. And they definitely just told me. So it's like, okay,
well,
I got
that's
it.
the beauty is they start calling us on our own stuff, right? They know the moment we're not in the flow, and they get to voice that. And it's not disrespect. It's like, no, you're right. It's okay to tell our kids that they're right. That's not going to make them lose respect for us. No, it's like, yeah, guess what? I totally, whatever, was out of line or was doing, it's pretty cool when they call us on our stuff, and we can have
they call us on our stuff. I just love it. And it's they call us even on our, when we try to speak in spiritual terms and, talking about higher levels, and, and they always know, they can sense when I'm overwhelmed, and they'll call me on it. They'll say, you know what, Mommy, I think you're just saying that because you're tired and this is what you want. So I think we need to have a family talk and all get grounded and figure out what is the best thing to do. So I laugh, and I'm thinking, all right, I can't say anything, because now they're realizing, I don't think, they say, Mommy, I think this is all about doing as I say, but not as I do. That's not right. I'm like, I just can't help but laugh. I just laugh. I laugh.
They're hilarious.
Yeah, they are.
It's pretty cool. So, well, I think we've covered quite a bit. I mean, we could probably still keep going on. But
you and I could talk for another couple hours. I just know it.
Yeah, easily. And this topic is a huge one. And I think that if anything our listeners can walk away with is just remembering that really, truly everything that occurs in our life it's for our highest good. So even if it doesn't seem that way, just to be able to just breathe into that knowingness that there is a bigger picture, there's a reason it's playing out the way it does, and when we approach it that way, then our kids stop feeling a victim of life. They see situations and circumstances as opportunities to learn and grow. And what's the alternate is to just live in fear and overwhelm. I'd rather just look at it from this perspective, that it's all perfectly playing out the way it should. And at the end of the day, we're all doing our best. And that it really is good enough, because it's at the core and at the foundation of it, there's love.
It's all love.
It's all love. So thank you
Nothing
so much.
It really is personal.
No, exactly. That's so true. So thank you, Jeannie, for joining us today. You continuously inspire me. You're an amazing mother and mentor. And I think it's important to just encourage each other that way too, right? Like, it's so easy to compare ourselves or to see that every situation, every family circumstance is unique and different. And we really have to celebrate our moments where we see. I mean, that's why I was feeling emotional this morning, even prepping the show, is like looking back where I've come from, where I am now, and just being like, like that was like perpetual overwhelm. And I don't even, like, I get glimpses of it still. Once in a while it pops up, but just to know that was how it was all the time. I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. And I feel so blessed that you're in my life. And to the listeners, is like, have someone that you can call and just that takes you back to remembering what matters. And heck, hire a coach. Like when you're going through difficult periods, like both Jeannie and I are available, but there's amazing coaches out there that can help you through tough periods. And I don't hesitate for a minute. And in fact, I've hired coaches for my teenagers as well, that there's stuff that they need an outsider's perspective, a mentor that's not the parent, that helps them sort through their processing of everything that's coming at them at that stage. So if they're open to talking to someone, I know amazing coaches for teenagers, but more importantly for you as a parent, I think. I mean, would you agree, Jeannie, that if we didn't have the coaching and the assistance that we have, it'd be very, very difficult to get through the challenges of parenting?
Absolutely. I agree 110%.
Cool. So tell us what's going on in your world these days. How can people get a hold of you if they do want to work with you, or if they want to see the magic of your photography? What's your Facebook?
This is the time and place that I have trouble talking about. You can.
I don't have trouble talking about how amazing you are, so I could go on and on. But what's your Facebook page that people could find you at?
My Facebook page is facebook.com/Ticket to Bliss, and that is where I start sharing the pictures of all the places that I've been, just my joy and my passion, and that's how you can reach me through that aspect. If you're interested in terms of coaching, I do that through The Wide Awakening, so you can log on to thewideawakening.com and look under facilitators, and that's it. You can also check my pictures out on Instagram at Ticket to Bliss.
Awesome. So make sure to do that. It's crazy, amazing stuff that she does. And as far as your coaching link, I will post that on the Blog Talk Radio page, so people can just click and go see what you're up to. So thank you so much to our listeners. If you know anyone, family or friends that you think would enjoy this call, feel free to pass on the link. And we love you all, and have a super rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Carole. Love you.
Love you, Jeannie. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Expanding Forward radio show with your host, Carole Lewitsky. To find out more about Carole, you can visit www.expandingforward.com or check her out on Facebook at facebook.com/expandingforward.